Wasn't unusual for me to get a hall pass from the guidance counselor because, again, I immersed myself in the school.
Right.
I helped doing everything at school that I could possibly get myself into. And so the pass shows up and I'm like, oh, cool, they need help doing something, you know. And so I walk down to the counselor's office and I walk in. And when I walk into the counselor's office, like, you walk in, it's like walking into a freaking AA meeting.
Yeah.
There was a circle of people sitting in chairs.
No. All right, Jennifer, how you doing?
I'm good.
Welcome back to the show. This is a third time that you're here, but only the second time we've actually got a recording. So the first time you came on, we talked about a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about today, but not in depth. It was kind of like just a get to know you kind of deal. But you're my sister, and I've known you my entire life. You're my older sister, so I know a lot about you, and you're one of the most inspirational people that I know. And you are so hard on yourself.
Ridiculously hard.
And the fact that, like, you're aware of it, though. As it's happening, you're very aware of it. You're like, I freaking hate myself. I hate the situation. I hate everything that's going on. You're aware of it, though. Mm-hmm. And you're aware of the reasons why you're that way.
Yeah.
And that's why what I want to talk about is because a lot of the same things that are wrong with you are wrong with me, too. And we grew up in the same house. Yep. So we went through a lot of the same trials and tribulations, except our experiences were vastly different. I was not abused growing up. I was neglected, but I was not abused.
Right. As a big sister, it was kind of I felt like it was my duty and responsibility to keep you out of that.
Right. Right. And I actually heard that from all three of my older siblings, that you guys all felt that it was your responsibility to hide the younger ones from, not hide, but shield the younger ones from the abuse. And for like to give a kind of example of what I was the baby.
You were.
And everybody loved me. Like I said, though, I was neglected. I had my parents were not around much. My mom was always at work. My dad was in prison.
Well, and you was a baby when everything exploded. You were 6 years old.
And it was 1991.
1992.
Okay, so it was 92. Okay, well, that's part of the reason why you're here is because I was so young when all this stuff happened.
So the actual date that your guys' world physically imploded was March 9th, 1992.
That's crazy it's actually really sad that you know that date. And I appreciate that you do. I do appreciate that you, and let's give everybody a little background here. So what we're talking about is you were physically and emotionally abused for most of your childhood.
Yeah, we gotta remember the essay too. So
yes, and that was a big part of what the hell is wrong with you.
Yeah, so let's go back just a little bit and give a little bit more background. So our mom, God love her, she's passed on now, but our mom got married. She was on number 5 when she passed, but my father and my older brother, we share the same dad. She got married to him in 1975, 76. Our older brother, Joe, came along in 77.
So it would have been 76 they got married.
And then I came along in 78. They divorced in, I think it was 80. And then at that point, Mom met your father, and they got married in, I think it was 80, 81. And then our sister Santina came along in 82. So she came along in September of 82. And then in December of 83, I got adopted. Our mom's husband adopted my older brother and I. And so on our birth certificates, he's our father, even though we have a birth father. But the thing is that I was a baby when I was adopted. I didn't know that he wasn't my father. I grew up thinking this man,
Right.
Was whatever. But, and then you came along in 85, and then things happened. And then in 92, everything changed.
So when I was speaking to our mom about this stuff, she said 1985-ish. It was right when things started changing, right after I was born. And I don't necessarily I don't avoid talking about these things because I'm very curious, but I avoid being disrespectful. Mm-hmm. And it is very hard for me to ask questions and remain respectful. And with you, I know that you understand there's, my quirks and things like that. And when I'm asking questions, I'm not asking questions to be hurtful.
Right.
I'm asking questions because I'm curious and I want to understand you. I want to understand what happened. Mm-hmm. For me, it was like my father was taken away.
Right.
And I was mad at everyone. I was mad at my mom. I wasn't mad at you because I didn't even look at you as a victim at the time. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand those things. I just knew Dad was gone.
Right.
And it was 1980-ish when you were adopted.
1982, 83. I feel like it was 83.
83? Okay, mm-hmm. So keep going.
Yeah, so I got adopted in 83, and, life went on. He worked a lot, but a lot with his workings, he drank a lot.
Right.
Mom worked a lot. She worked 2 jobs most of the time. And then she started going to school. So she was in school full time, working 2 jobs. And so it was just us kids at home with an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And so right about the time that we got adopted is about the time the abuse started. Initially it started as physical abuse. That's where everything really started at. And it started with our older brother. He beat the fire out of Joe often. And then with Mom never being home, things changed. It started to be where he would watch pornography in front of me. And that became a regular occurrence. And the pornography watching turned into him masturbating. And then it continued on, and eventually it turned into me being molested. The molestation started when I was 5 years old. It was right after I got adopted.
Wow.
It went on for 8 years. I was embarrassed. Like, I felt like something was wrong with me. Like, it was my fault. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I really felt like it was my fault. And I felt like it was the biggest secret I had to hide from everybody. Me and James just had this conversation the other day, is that, that's one of the reasons that I never said anything to anybody, is because I was fearful that if I told anybody, that the truth would come out and I would lose everybody that was important to me, because I firmly and deeply believed that someone would murder him. And if someone did that, then I would have no support system at all after that. So I kept that secret locked up tight. And like I said, it continued on. The physical, like beating and whooping and stuff, didn't really take part in me anymore at that point. It was all molestation at that point. but he was super secretive of it. I mean, most of the time.
How did you know at 5 to 13 years old what you were doing was bad, or what was going on was bad? How did you know that?
Initially, I didn't. So I thought, I was like, you know, when he first started in with watching the pornography and things like that, I didn't understand. I was confused, like, what is this? What is going on, you know? But throughout all of it, once things started to click a little bit more in my brain, like this just doesn't feel right, was when nearly every time it would happen, he would break down and cry and tell me that it was our secret and I couldn't tell anybody.
Oh.
So I'll never forget the first time that happened. You know, we lived on Olive, and it had happened. And, you know, afterwards I ran to the bathroom and I tried to lock myself in. I think the lock was broken on the door. I don't remember, but, you know, it's like he came in there and he just sat on the side of the bathtub and just cried. And it's like, you know, you can't tell anybody our secret, you know, that, and made me have this guilt complex about if I told anybody that, you know, I'd lose everything, right, essentially. And so it's just something that I hid deep within my soul forever in 10 days. And so, you know, at that point, I did my best to never be home. I tried real hard to never be home, especially if Mom wasn't going to be there. I immersed myself in every freaking school activity that I could possibly immerse myself in. But at the same time, I knew that I had to spend time at home with you guys because somebody had to cook dinner. Somebody had to clean the house because if the house didn't get clean, if dinner didn't get cooked, somebody was getting their butt whooped. And I didn't want that laying on my shoulders.
Right.
And so, but throughout all of it, you know, I excelled in school. That was my escape.
And that's something I'm very proud of. You know, even looking back, you graduated high school in 1997. Mm-hmm. You were class valedictorian. No, you didn't make valedictorian?
No, not valedictorian.
So I remember these conversations happening in 1997. Like, again, this is a long time ago. This is almost 30 years ago now. But in 1997, I remember those conversations, a possible valedictorian. You made the president's president. Was it the president's?
The Lampions.
Okay.
So I graduated 8th out of 173 people.
See, that's great.
So I was in the top 10%. You know, I got tons of scholarships, all of that goodness. But yeah, so I was in all the honors program, and then of course in middle school, you know, in grade school I did like basketball and volleyball and all those things. Middle school I did cheerleading, and that was a lot of fun, and I became really obsessed with cheerleading, and then that continued on into high school. And then in middle school I also started track and field. That was a blast. I loved track and field.
Yeah.
100-meter hurdles were my favorite. I'm short. I wasn't great at it, but I had fun.
I remember you could jump really high. I remember that from when I was a kid.
And I think that helped with cheerleading too. I don't know, but yeah, but throughout school, I made amazing friends. And so one of my best friends was Jennifer. We'll just say her last initials H. She had a birthday party. It was her 13th birthday, and it was March 1992. So March 7th was Saturday. Her party started on Friday. Just super close friends got together on Friday, and then it continued throughout the whole weekend. But I was 13. The secret started getting deeper and deeper within me, and I started closing people off. And so at that point in our lives, I don't know if people still play this or not, but Skeletons in the Closet.
I'd never heard of it.
It was a game that teenage girls played way back in the day, and you know,
maybe why I never heard of it.
And so I'm part of it. You know, one of the girls was like, Jennifer, why have you been such a bee lately? You know, like why? And it's like somebody punched me in my stomach. I'll never forget that day. And this was on Saturday, March 7th. It's like literally somebody punched me in the stomach, and I just started bawling, and everybody's like, what the hell just happened?
Right.
And I just had to turn around and walk away. And my best friend came up to me, and she's like, what's going on? And she was the first person that I told. By that point, everybody at the party knew.
And then you have to worry about that as well. You have to, is everybody looking at me? Is everybody judging me?
Oh, yeah. From that point on, from middle school beyond, I felt like everybody looked at me different because everybody knew. So that was on Saturday, and the party continued Saturday night. Sunday comes around, and he shows up to pick me up. And they're like, we're not letting you go. And I'm like, you've got to let me leave. You can't keep me here. If he finds out, this is not good. You've got to let me go home. So reluctantly, they let me go home. Monday morning comes around and we're at school. And it was second period. I'll never forget it. But it was second period. And I get a hall pass from the guidance counselor's office. Wasn't unusual for me to get a hall pass from the guidance counselor. Because again, I immersed myself in the school.
Right.
I helped doing everything at school that I could possibly get myself into. And so the pass shows up and I'm like, oh, cool, they need help doing something, you know? And so I walk down to the counselor's office and I walk in. And when I walk into the counselor's office, like, you walk in, it's like walking into a freaking AA meeting.
Yeah.
There was a circle of people sitting in chairs.
Now, when you say that, have you ever been to an AA meeting?
No, totally just from TV.
Okay.
just TV. Or you know, like a grief support counseling, whatever. With
Right.
a whole bunch of people sitting in a circle, and I'm just like...
Also like an intervention, almost.
Almost, yeah. And I'm like, what? You know, and they're all adults. It's not like any of them. And they're like, Jennifer, go ahead and have a seat. And I'm just like, what is going on? You know, I'm thinking, because, you know, Joe was a troublemaker. You know, Joe was always in trouble for something at school. And I'm just thinking, you know, have one of my parents been hurt? Is my siblings in trouble? You know, and they sat us down, they sat me down and said, you know, we have had somebody come to us and tell us some allegations. And we wanted to talk to you about it. And it was really rough, but at the same time, there was a certain level of relief.
Yeah. I can only imagine. It's like a weight lifted.
Yeah, but it was like a weight lifted off your shoulders, but now it's on your chest because you got to get the rest of it out.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of took a deep breath. And I'm like, let me guess. My best friends came in here. Yep, he did. That's why they're my best friends.
And these people are still your best friends, correct?
Yeah, I don't get to talk to her as often. Life led her a little bit differently.
Yeah, I haven't seen her in years, and she lives in the same city as I do. So.
Yeah, but I do get to talk to her on occurrence. But I still consider her one of my best friends. But her living through that secret with me, I had every reason in the world as I grew up after all of that to be an alcoholic, to be a drug addict, to be not even alive today. I had every opportunity in the world. But I chose to not let that define me. But that was a choice that I made from the jump. And even though I was able to get past it, not everybody else that was involved in the whole incident was able to. And so there's a lot of my friends have turned to drugs. And our city's not the greatest city to stray away from that. But yeah, so...
it seems like there's more opportunities to get into it than there are to get out.
100%. But yeah, so I gave my statement to the counselors, and they informed me that they were going to have to call law enforcement. And I'm just like, all right, this is happening today. Like, this is ending today.
Yeah.
And so they called law enforcement, and they came up there, and they got my permission to transport me to the juvenile offices.
Right.
And so I gave them my permission, and I remember us driving from the middle school down to the juvenile offices, which is right around the corner from the police department. And as we're driving down the road, you know, I've got like 2 detectives in the front seat, you know, and I'm sitting in the back seat by myself, and we're driving along, and I don't know if you remember this truck or not, but he had like a forest green truck with like a camper shell on it.
Bernie.
Is
His
that
name was Bernie.
That's the vehicle that he had at the time, and so we passed him, and I just like sunk down into the seat. I'm like, just try to hide. He can't see me. And so we get down to the juvenile offices, and dude, it was the longest freaking day of my life. I didn't realize I wasn't going to be making it back to school that day, but it was the longest day of my life. And so they sat me in the room, and they're like, we're going to have to call your parents. And I was just like, all right. And so I don't know whether they physically called them or whether they went to the house, but I think that they called, and, mom answered the phone, and they're like, hey, we've got your daughter down at juvenile hall. We're going to have you come down here to take care of some stuff. And, mom, she's like, what the hell did Santina do again?
Right.
Yeah. I love you, T, but yeah, you were kind of a troublemaker. And they're like, no, it's not Santina, it's Jennifer, and at that point, mom's like, what?
Yeah, and by that time, I had already gotten in trouble in certain points in my life, and I was only like 6.
Yeah, you were 6. But so mom and Robert came down to juvenile hall, and as soon as they walked in the door, they put handcuffs on him and took him away. And mom,
so did you see that? I
did not. They had me hidden. I was in a giant conference room, and mom's like, what the hell is going on? And so they took her into a room and sat her down and told her. And then she was, let me see Jennifer. And so they pulled me into the room, and she's like, is this true? And I was like, yeah. And for the longest time after that, and like I said, you were still a baby. Me and mom had a real tarnished relationship after that. Our mom...
And it wasn't the best before that.
It wasn't. But she thought I made it up. She thought I was lying.
And do you think that she thought you were lying, or she was in denial?
I think I don't know. I could see both sides of that. I think the portion that she thought that I was in denial, yeah, I agree that she was probably in denial. But I think she thought I was lying because not only was he abusive to all of us, he beat the fire out of her too. And I think she thought that I had made it up to protect her. Okay,
that makes sense. Yeah.
And I don't think people think about that. But I think that she thought that I made it up to save her. And so at that point, they had to get her permission to do a videotaped interview with me, because in the event that
you were unable to testify,
they needed my testimony. In the event that I wasn't able to emotionally handle court, they wanted to make sure they had it all on video. And so my video, I want to say it was 127 minutes long.
Do you have that video?
I do not. I could probably get it from the police department, honestly. But I have the entire case file.
One of these days, I'd like to sit down and with you and go through those things. And I know how painful it is. From what I understand about PTSD, not necessarily reliving those things will help, but normalizing how you feel about those things and dealing with that trauma over and over and over again can actually help more than it hurts. So one of these days, I'd love to sit down with those things and go through those things with you.
Well, if you want,
I'd actually like to do it when we close this chapter of our lives. And I'm getting a little emotional right now because it means a lot to me. Because my entire world changed that day. Mm-hmm. I lost my dad.
Yeah.
And I know that you understand these things because we've had long conversations about it. Like, I know that these things happened, and then I can't help but think, how different my life would have been if these things would have never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a dad. I didn't have a mom. I had nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, I didn't understand fully how you felt until I stop and think about, well, Jennifer had less than nobody. Jennifer had people that were abusing her and neglecting her. And while I was being neglected, I didn't know I was being neglected at the time. And while
because you at least still had us older kids.
Exactly. And now I want to go back to when you were 5.
Mm-hmm.
When the abuse started happening, was it just touching, or how did it go at first? And how long did it take to escalate?
And so the shitty part about trauma is a lot of times if it's real bad, you block it out.
Yes. And that age, it's...
So I've blocked a lot out. I still remember a lot, don't get me wrong, but I've blocked a ton, especially through all my counseling, because that's one of the things as a kid, when you go through all of this, the court system provides you counseling. And my counselor was fantastic. I could not have asked for a better counselor. But once that ends, it's done. You're dropped off the face of the earth. You don't get support for the rest of your life. Who gives a shit if you still have PTSD?
Right.
I struggle with it today still. But I don't remember specifics from that young, other than it started with the watching pornography.
But it did escalate eventually from touching to ultimately penetration.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what age that started?
No.
So I didn't know that until recently. I had no idea. The only thing I knew was the molestation allegations. And then I read the charges. The charges is sodomy.
Sodomy.
And I know what that means. And that means there was penetration at some point. And how does one deal? Like, I mean, I guess you didn't deal with it very well, obviously.
Right.
But how does one survive shit like that?
I ask myself that every day.
How did you get through that?
I did start drinking in high school. But
Was it like Drew Barrymore drinking, or was it like on the weekends every now and then?
It was weekends. It was a lot of weekends. So, of course, I was a varsity cheerleader. So, all the older college guys were.
And if you can imagine back then in 1997, where we live, it was kind of like varsity blues for this one.
Yeah, so. Pretty much. But yeah, every weekend, I was through a fifth of Jack every weekend.
That's freaking nuts.
At 17, 18 years old. And so, but of course that started when I was 15. And so my junior year, I quit cheerleading because I knew that things had to get straight.
Yeah.
Otherwise the other side of my life was gonna, I was like, I've sulked about this for 3 years now. Something's got to give.
Was it like one of those points where you're like, okay, I got to put on the big girl panties and I got to get shit done?
Yes and no. So the pivotal point for that was, by that point in our life, our mom was remarried.
Yes. To another abuser, by the way.
To another alcoholic. Big time alcoholic. And, I was 15 years old. She come home from work one day and we got into an argument. And I told her, I was like, if you didn't have to rely on men, we wouldn't be in this situation.
I remember this day.
And she beat the fire out of me with a plastic hanger. Beat the fire out of me. The next day I went to school. What do you think I did? Went to the counselor. And at that point, I was 15 years old. I got emancipated. Not legally, but enough. We didn't go through all the physical motions of doing the paperwork, but
Right,
I got emancipated. Right. I got removed from the home. And it's that point where I was like, you know what? I got to quit drinking.
Where did you go at that point? Where did you live?
The only place I had. I went to my grandparents.
And how was your relationship with them at that point?
my grandparents, our grandparents, my relationship with them is, God, they really took on the role of my parents,
Mom
honestly. They were my pseudo mom and dad. Because after everything came out, they felt guilty.
Yeah.
They really felt guilty. Like they should have been there to save us. The only difference was you and Santina had Dick and Shirley.
Yeah.
Joe and I didn't.
Yeah.
And Dick and Shirley were wealthy in their own manner.
Yeah.
And we weren't their grandkids. And so Joe and I didn't get things.
Did you feel that way?
100%.
Before 1992, did you feel differently, that you were treated differently?
100%. I'll never forget, there was one time we, her store was Dillard's for some reason. Shirley's was. I don't know why, but she loved her some Dillard's.
I used to like Dillard's when I was in high school. Not so much anymore.
And I remember us going there for something. I don't even remember what it was. I wanted one sweater. She spent like $200 and some odd on Santina, which is a lot of money back then. And I couldn't even get a $30 sweater. And so, that's one of those, I knew that Joe and I were looked at differently. I knew at that point, we're like, it makes sense now, and all through us growing up with our extracurricular activities and everything, what I didn't know at the time was that if you guys wanted to do something, Dick and Shirley just hand them money for you to do it. I had to go raise money to do things. I remember...
And you hustled quite a bit back then,
I did. I worked a lot. I babysat a lot. But I remember, like, high school, I did marching band in high school. You remember that. But
yeah.
we went to Walt Disney World, and I had to raise money for Walt Disney World.
Which was expensive as hell back then, too.
Yeah. And Grandma.
It's not near as much as it is today, but...
Our grandma, my grandma, not your grandma. I mean, not Shirley, but our grandma stood on a street corner for 8 hours with a boot to raise money for me to go to Walt Disney World. Would Shirley and Dick have done? Hell no, they wouldn't have. They'd just write a check. But yeah, so without our grandparents, our mom's parents, I wouldn't be where I am today without them. But I also attribute a lot of my successes to our aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Me too. Me as a dad, I do too.
Because after everything happened, they had a level of I think responsibility they felt at that point too, and so
I think everybody in the family kind of did.
I think it blindsided everybody.
I think it did too, and nobody knew what was going on behind closed doors. I mean, of course, maybe they had their suspicions, but
I think they knew that there was abuse. I don't think they knew that there was sexual abuse.
Right.
I started immersing myself in church, and so I went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday, and my aunt and uncle. Yeah.
They're wonderful, wonderful people. I talk about them on the podcast sometimes, and they're like, when I talk about our aunt and uncle, they're like, out of all the people that I've ever met in my entire life, those two specifically are the greatest people I've ever met.
Oh, yeah.
And that's saying something, because I talk to at
teach
least
you
100 people
too.
a week.
They'll teach you lessons too. You'll have to ask Uncle Ed about the one lesson he taught me. So, by this point, later on in life, I'm like 16, 17 years old. And so I'm living at Grandma and Grandpa's house. And Grandma and Grandpa had went, I think they were in Canada. I think they went on a fishing trip. And so I had been allowed to stay home, but Ed and Janice checked on me or whatever. Yeah, my dumb ass had a party. And so they, I don't know how they found out, but they found out I was having a party. And so they come and scooped me up once the cops left and whatever. But Uncle Ed and Aunt Janice came and got me, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And of course, by this point in life, I am so exhausted from being out partying all night. And so I remember the next day I'm at their house and I'm wanting to lay down on the couch because I'm so tired. Every time I close my eyes, Uncle Ed would shoot me with a water gun. Every time. And so after that, I quickly realized we don't have parties while Grandma and Grandpa's not home. So that's my one lesson Uncle Ed taught me. Don't have parties.
He's a great guy. Great guy.
Wonderful,
wonderful father. Like, if I could take anything that is the best about those two, and they're great people, is that they are wonderful, wonderful parents. And the way that they love their children and grandchildren, I aspire to have that kind of relationship with my kids.
Absolutely.
And that's, I mean, that's where I was going with, like, the salt of the earth. They're the best people I've ever met out of all the people that I've met. And the thing that they're best at is being parents, I think.
And grandparents now.
And grandparents, yes. Yeah. It's so wonderful that I see pictures and all the memories and stuff and the text messages, and when I see them, they're glowing, and it's fantastic. I aspire to have that kind of relationship with my kids and grandkids.
Absolutely.
And so you're not the oldest, but you're not the youngest.
I'm the oldest girl.
You're the oldest girl. And did you think that your life was normal at some points?
I don't know that I ever felt like my life was normal.
So you knew that there was something wrong and something off your entire life? So that's where we are different. I didn't know what I didn't know. Everyone I knew had a similar life to me. We were very poor. We lived in a poor neighborhood. It wasn't poor,
right?
But the people around us had no extra income, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I thought everything was like that. I thought everybody was that way. When people talk about rich and wealthy, that was so unobtainable for me. I didn't even think about it. I thought everybody lived like we did. I thought everybody's dad was in prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, for me, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Well, did you know, because you haven't read the case file, did you know that we never went to trial?
No, I did not know that.
He wrote a confession letter to the judge, and I have a copy of that. And so my testimony never had to be played in court. I never had to go to court.
Now, I do have a relationship with my dad, and he does not shy away from talking about it. Like, he'll talk about it. He won't, there's no denial. There's none of that stuff. And he's even offered, hey, if you would like to one day sit down and go through all this stuff, I'm here for it, and I have all this stuff. So he's never, to me, he's not in prison anymore, and that's one of the reasons why you don't live in town.
That is 100% one of the reasons why I don't live here anymore.
You moved down to Tennessee when he was released from prison. That was 2012-ish?
2008.
Jesus. Man, that's been almost 20 years ago. But that was, for me, I did feel a little something when everybody left. Not only did I lose my dad, I lost my sister, but I lost my brother first. Joe moved out before you, and he was a pain in the ass for everyone.
Right.
But it was most likely because of the abuse and neglect that he went through, and he didn't know any other experiences. He didn't know what he didn't know.
So Joe found out the same weekend.
So he didn't know?
He didn't know previously, no. He found out the same weekend. So it's kind of like he knew before the police knew. We'll just put it that way.
Right.
But Joe found out the same weekend. So it's like everything kind of exploded all at once.
So it was a quick unraveling to things.
Yeah. Flashbang.
Yeah. What was that? Was it destructive in your mind? Was everything falling apart, or was, like you said, that weight shifted from your shoulders and now it's on your chest?
I don't really know how to explain it because I didn't know what I didn't know. I knew shit was about to change real fast. I didn't know how it was going to change. I didn't know what it was going to change. I didn't know if I was going to be taken from the home. I didn't know what I didn't know. And the other portion of it too was I didn't know if I was the only one.
I was going to ask that if the abuse stopped with you.
I have been told it stopped with me, but to this day, I firmly believe it didn't.
I was never abused, sexually or otherwise. I got way too many heavy-handed whoopings, but in my mind, I justify those because I feel like I deserved them. I was an asshole, and the way I felt about it was my mom was kind of doing the best she could to raise me up the best that she knew how. Now, you guys, you and our older brother had issues that I didn't have with our mother. I was the baby, so I was babied.
Right.
I was shielded from a lot of stuff. I'm not angry at you or our siblings for that. I am angry at my mom at some points because she shielded things from me that she shouldn't have. Her health was one of those things. Like you guys, when she passed away, it wasn't a shock to you.
Right.
Mom hid everything from me. When I heard things, it was the most sugar-coated shit that you'd ever heard in your life. She's in the hospital for over a year, and I thought she was fine. The only thing that was in there, infection in the belly, that was it. And that was the only reason she was horrible. There. And so when she passed away, it kind of blindsided me.
So she was in the hospital in 2006. That's when she was in the hospital for so long. And at that point in my life, I was divorced from my daughter's father, and so I didn't have anybody in my life.
She was actually 2000.
05, 06.
I wanted to say 14. She was in there for a solid year.
Yeah, I was long gone by then. But when she was in St. Luke's,
that's right. That is right. That's before you left.
Mm-hmm. I lived at the hospital.
That's right. I forgot about that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention because I was giving our other sister all the credit for that. I completely forgot about that.
I lived at the hospital day in, day out. Dude, she talked off her rocker. It was the craziest stuff ever. And what we didn't realize was...
I got some funny stories about that.
Was that she was addicted to OxyContin, and they cold turkeyed her off that crap.
And see, I didn't know any of that stuff. Like hearing another sibling say that she was addicted, that's news to me. Because I know that she had drug issues. She didn't know she had drug issues.
Yeah.
It was a prescription.
It was prescription. But the
and
bad
they were all
news
prescribed to her.
Yeah, they were prescribed to her, but she couldn't live without them.
Yeah.
I don't know that she may have ran out of her script a little early here and there, but I don't know that she abused them.
Right.
But she was definitely addicted to them. And I think that she created medical problems within herself to be able to get to another point, to be able to have another surgery or to have more medication.
Have scripts. And I think...
And I think she Dr. Hopped too.
Yes. I witnessed that myself. And I actually, sitting here together today, I'm actually putting things together, why she may have done those things. She probably felt a lot of guilt. She probably felt a lot of pain throughout her life. I often think about that kind of stuff when I'm talking to my kids about their own mothers. And I reflect how I feel about my mom onto them.
Yeah.
And, when they start talking negatively about their mom, I'm like, hey, listen, your mom loves you. It may not be evident today, it may not be evident yesterday, but your mom loves you. And I know that. So please stop talking bad about her.
Well, I think you've got that benefit that I don't have, because when everything exploded, I didn't have parents, I knew that at some point I'd like to be a mom. I never knew I'd be able to have kids.
Yeah.
And then when I met my daughter's father, the doctors told me that, it could take a really long time for you to conceive if that's what you want to do. And so we decided early on, right after we got engaged, that we were going to try to have a baby after we got married or whatever. And within 30 days of coming off of birth control, I was pregnant. And we're like, well, I thought you said up to 5 years, Doc.
I wasn't ready.
But the day that I told Mom that I was pregnant, yeah.
How'd that go?
It was not good.
Why?
She yelled at me. She got in my face. She chastised me.
Now,
keep in mind,
on.
I was 25 years old.
I was just getting ready to ask, how old were you?
I was 25. Telling me I had ruined my life by choosing to have a baby.
That's interesting.
Because I wasn't going to law school yet. But the portion that, I don't know if you know this or not, but like...
You had already graduated a school at that point, right?
Yeah, I had already, because I graduated 2 years before my daughter was born. But I had just been accepted to law school.
Yeah.
And then I found out I was pregnant. And so I was like, all right, law school waits because I can't have a baby while I'm in law school.
Yes, you can.
I know. I know this now, but I know more now than I did then. But I mentally I didn't think I could handle that load.
It's so easy. Like, if Mom was here, I could just explain to her, like, instead of bringing her down, you should build her up, because what she needed at that point was support.
Support? What's that?
Exactly. You needed.
I don't ever get support. I don't know what that word means.
As a matter of fact, you're actually the most independent out of all of us, and I am very, very independent. I'm so independent that I will go days without eating versus asking for help.
Yeah.
I've actually done that. Not in a long time, but I have done it. I think it is so easy to raise kids.
I wish it was easy to raise kids.
No, it is. It is really easy to raise kids.
Well, so for me, raising my daughter wasn't the easiest. There
was a lot of undue pressures that you put on yourself.
Well, that
about
too,
parenting.
but because of all of the abuse, I didn't know how to treat kids. You know?
Yeah, I get that.
I didn't. Yeah. I did the best I could, but I know I was ridiculously hard, and through the PTSD and all of the stuff that I went through as a kid, I was angry at the world.
Yeah, and you still are.
I still am. Yeah, for sure. And then her dad left when she was 8 months old, and
And he
I didn't want kids. I didn't. And then I met him, and I was like, maybe we can do this.
And he actually lives here, and
Yeah.
and your daughter lives in Tennessee.
Yeah, she's with me, and so he left when she was 8 months old, and I was like, I didn't sign up to be a single mom. I didn't sign up to do this alone. So I was mad. I was real mad. And then because she was born in 2004, and then in 2008, we'd been divorced for. I think divorce had been final about 2.5 years at that point. And he was with his new wife, of whom...
Which they're not together anymore.
No, they got married really soon after our divorce was final. What I didn't know was that the entire time we were married, he was sleeping with her.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that either.
When Tamara was 6 weeks old, I got really, really sick and had to be in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 10 days. But because Tamara was a breastfed baby, she was in the hospital with me.
Yeah.
10 days I was spent in the hospital. He came to see me one time.
That's crazy.
And it didn't make sense to me at that point. It was all I got to work. He had to be at his girlfriend's house is what it amounted to.
Well, his wife and baby is in a hospital.
Well, his wife and his baby was in the hospital. But yeah, so the divorce was really hard on me. And so his weekend visitations with her, when she would show up with him, like gutting you with a knife. But between that and then I don't even remember. It was warm outside. I had stopped at the gas station over here at Speedy's on Frederick. And I had stopped to run in and grab me a pack of cigarettes. And I go in, and I stopped dead in my tracks. Robert's standing in there.
Yeah.
And
Wasn't too long after that you left.
Full-on panic attack. Full-on panic attack. It was like September, October, I think, of 2007. As soon as I left from having my nervous breakdown in the parking lot in my car, I immediately went back to the house and started looking for a job somewhere, anywhere.
Other than here.
I didn't care where I went. Didn't care where I went.
So I think you have a very similar outlook on parenting that I do, actually. So when I say it's easy to raise kids, you said, no, it's not.
No.
And I think we look at the easy parts the same. Mm-hmm. So financial stability, like raising kids financially, not hard.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
Raising kids emotionally, that's the hard part.
100%.
Because while you're disciplining, like, I don't know, you think a lot similar ways that I do. When I'm disciplining,
that's why we're so close.
when I'm disciplining my kids, I always worry about what they think about me and how they feel while I'm doing it.
I don't worry so much about that. I worry about, and when I discipline her, I don't think about it in the moment. It's after I did it. I'm like, oh shit.
Was I too hard on her? Was I not hard enough?
No. Oh shit. How is this going to impact her in 10 years?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think about that shit all the time. I worry about my kids liking me.
I worry, like, I have a really bad temper, and I know this. And my daughter, oh gosh, she's just like me. But I would scream, and 20 minutes later, I just want to apologize.
Yeah.
Because
that guilt is eating you alive.
Yeah.
And did you know that not a lot of people reflect like that? They don't feel bad for the things that they've done after they do them. They don't have that moment of self-reflection to think, God damn it, what did I just say? You know what I mean?
There have been moments, where I would grab a suitcase and I'm like, pack your shit. I'm not doing this anymore. You can go live with your dad. And it's not, I'm, 20, 30 minutes later, and I'm like, what did you just do?
Yeah, what did you say?
Like, how is this going to impact your relationship with your daughter later?
Yeah.
And so, and I think a lot of that reflects back on me thinking about all the times we got yelled at and we got screamed at and we got this.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I wound up alone, and so I don't ever want my daughter to feel like she's alone, like she doesn't have me to come to.
Absolutely.
And now she's getting ready to be 21, and there is not a single day of the week that I don't talk to her at least once, if not 87 times a day.
Yes.
Every single day on her way home from work, I'm her first phone call.
And I worry about overcompensating sometimes.
I worried about it for a long time.
So what happened to me that bothered me a lot when I was younger is I could never talk to my mom. Mm-hmm. Anytime that I come in the room, really excited, wanted to talk to her, she'd shut that shit down.
She didn't have time for us.
She was watching television or quiet, my shows are on. Yep. Now that I'm older, I catch myself doing that. I catch myself, will you shut the fuck up? I'm trying to watch this.
Right.
I catch myself doing that all the time. And then I have to stop and think, all right, come back here. And then I explain to him exactly why I did what I just did. Mm-hmm. And I say, hey, it's been a long day. I'm stressed out. I just want to watch this TV. But I'm going to pause this for a moment so you can have your moment. Now, what did you want? And it's usually the most ridiculous bullshit ever. But it's that moment that they are allowed to come back and speak that's important to them. And I remember how it made me feel when I was younger, and I didn't get that time.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes I overcompensate. I feel like because that stuff happened to me,
I overcompensated, I think, monetarily.
Yes. I can definitely see that with myself as well.
My daughter never wanted for anything.
My kids are spoiled. They don't know what it's like to go without.
Oh, she doesn't either. She turned 16 years old about her car, and when we left to go to Tennessee the day before we were supposed to leave, her father tried to take custody of her. And I'm like, dude, I know at this point it's all about the money. And I'm like, if I sign off on the child support, because he was like,
I remember this. I remember
he was close to like $10,000 behind on child support, I think.
I do remember
and
that.
I was like, I know it's about the money because it's not about our daughter. He never wanted visitation, really.
Well, and I also remember you asked, you had several conversations with the people around you, grandparents especially. Like, how do you feel about this? What should I do? And I was there for a lot of that stuff. Yeah. I remember.
And so as soon as I said, I'll tell you what, I'll sign off on your child support. I'll sign off all of their $10,000 back child support, and I'll let the judge take it as low as he can take it because I don't want your money.
And it worked out. It actually worked out for the best for all parties involved. Tamara didn't get, your daughter, she didn't get a hateful, resentful relationship with her father. Her mom wasn't a total pain in the ass to her father. At that point, after the divorce proceedings and after you left, it became, it is what it is. And now this is what we're doing. We all have our parts to play, and we're going to play those parts.
Well, and I think a lot of that, I've got two best friends, Sarah and Jennifer, to thank for that, because I think at the end of the day, as a kid, I didn't know that I was adopted. I didn't know my birth father until I was a teenager.
And you say you're best friends. I look at these people like they're family.
They are my family. We're gonna have brunch tomorrow. They are family. But I didn't know I had another father, and so once I knew that he was my father, Mom talked mad crap about him. Mom was always bad about our dad.
Yes, I remember.
And so once Tamara was born and I moved away, I was bound and determined. I never wanted to be that person. I was never going to talk ill about her father to her until she asked questions that could portray kind of where her life led.
So when you have to tell the truth.
Right.
Pretty much.
And so that happened later on, and I was able to keep it away far enough that it didn't impact her relationship with him. But we've been in Tennessee 17 years now, and he's came to Tennessee one time to see her. He didn't even come for her high school graduation. So.
And I'm broke. I'm poor.
And you come see me all the time.
I come see you all the time.
You come see me all the time. No, he doesn't come down and he doesn't visit her. The thing about it is I drive. I used to come up here like once a month. Shortly after I left, I come up once a month, if not once every 3 months.
God, that'd be annoying.
It was, because mom was sick.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if that was for Tamara for visitation or.
No.
Okay.
Well, and I had a guilt complex about leaving Grandma and Grandpa, because if we rewind a little bit, I bought my first house when I was 18. I wouldn't have been able to do that without the support of Grandma and Grandpa. They didn't finance it, but without their support, I bought my first house when I was 18. And then, when I married her father, we had a house in Independence, and we had my house, his house, our house. And he stayed in our house, and I took over his house. But he quit paying the mortgage on our house. And so I was like, fine, I can't get refinanced to buy your house out. And so I was just like, washed my hands of it and walked away and went and stayed back with Grandma and Grandpa, because at that point I had sold my house. So I didn't have a house.
I didn't know any of that shit.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know any of that. So you really, when you went down to Tennessee, it was like starting over fresh from
100%.
From less than zero because you had no credit. Your credit was in the crapper.
Yeah, because he filed bankruptcy after they repossessed the house.
So that was on you. And then, so you're starting out less than zero. You're starting out at negative 50%.
Yeah, I was forced to file bankruptcy because otherwise they were going to come after me for the house.
Did you learn anything throughout that bankruptcy?
No.
Bankruptcy is for rich people. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. I realized I'm never doing it again.
Now, see, that's where you and I differ. Like,
no, I'm not.
Bankruptcy is the reason for bankruptcy, actually, why it's legal to file bankruptcy is to encourage risk taking.
Yeah, but the thing about the filing the bankruptcy. And I mean, really all it did for me was it got rid of the mortgage. I didn't try to keep myself in debt if we would have got rid of my student loans, we'd have been having a different conversation about
we got to talk off air about that. I got 3 months.
But after I walked away from his house, we moved in with grandma and grandpa. And so, at that point I had to rebuild my life. And, I was, at that juncture, I had been accepted to law school, but decided to put law school off and realized that I couldn't work full time and be a mom and go to law school. And so I landed on, I'm going to go to grad school instead. And so while we stayed with grandma and grandpa, they kept her while I was at work all day. And I went to grad school. And so I started my master's degree. And
so did having a baby ruin your life?
No, it did not.
It made it better, didn't it?
Absolutely. I'd do it all over again every day.
Hell yeah. I tell that to people all the time. Like, being a dad gave me purpose.
100%. I firmly believe today that if I'd never had my daughter, I wouldn't be here today.
I believe that. Because you know, as a matter of fact, before she was born, and, you brought it up. I wouldn't have brought it up otherwise, but you were pretty self-destructive
100%.
prior to that. You had relationship issues. You had not just like personal relationship issues, but you had relationship issues with everybody. You and I actually fought back then.
Oh, yeah.
Like siblings do, not like, fist fights, but, we had arguments and stuff. Yeah. I was the annoying teenage brother, and you were the older sister that, was having a rough go at things. And back to our childhood, though, where I have a hard time explaining to people, like, why I am the way I am, and like how I can be 40 years old and not care if I have friends, and as long as I have my family. Mm-hmm. And when things happen, like a couple of years ago, AT&T had a mess up nationwide.
Oh yeah.
The service went out for an entire day. People were losing their minds.
That was because their building blew up in Nashville.
Right. Yeah. I didn't think about that, but yes, you're right. So
I was there, I know.
Anyway, I watched people like, I don't have any cell phone service. What am I going to do? And they're freaking out all day. And I was like,
yeah,
peace. Like my phone didn't ring all day. And I was here at home most of the day, so I had Wi-Fi. I could, play videos or whatever, but I didn't need to. Mm-hmm. I think being poor when I was younger, and going through those struggles, and when I come up against adversity now, like during a storm, if our power gets knocked out, one of the reasons why I'm prepared is because I grew up poor.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just, okay, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I go get emergency power, get it going, try to remember to keep everybody warm. And if I can't keep everybody warm, I need to shut off the water. Doing things like that comes second nature to me. I don't even have to think about it. Whereas other people that...
we at least grew up with a gas stove so we could warm our water.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. A lot of people don't understand that side of it. Or was it a gas? No, we had an electric stove, but when the gas would get shut off, we'd lose our pilot for our water heater. And
so I think we went 2 whole years
without hot
2
water.
whole years without gas.
Yeah. And so I remember that's when we lived in the 2-story house, and there's steep ass steps. And so that's how Joe's foot got maimed, is Carolyn boiling water up and down the stairs. So we all had to share bath water because, you only carry that shit up the stairs once.
Yeah, and I had to be the last one in the bath because I was the dirtiest. And then by the time I get there, it's just nasty brown gray water. And I'm like,
gravy.
what the fuck?
Just crawling the gravy. But yeah,
Good times. And I think that struggle is what helps me adapt to today's issues. Like if suddenly all the stores were closed or didn't have any food, I'm right next door to the woods.
All of that is why I am who I am and why I'm okay being alone. Because at least if I'm alone, it's peaceful.
Yeah, there you go. You don't have to worry about making decisions for anyone else. You got to make those
I don't
decisions
have to entertain
for you.
anybody. I don't have to wonder about their level of morality and honesty and, are they trying to pull one over on me? If I don't involve myself and immerse myself with anybody, then I don't have to worry about it.
Now, that's interesting that you don't have to worry about other people's ulterior motives if you're alone. I don't think about shit like that. I don't. Of course, I do think about it like subconsciously, but it sounds like you are consciously thinking about, is this person trying to get one over on me? Is that with every person you meet?
100%.
See, I don't go through that. I naturally trusting of people until I have a reason not to. But I have the...
Well, and I think a lot of that, too, is the difference between me being a female and you not.
That's true. I don't think about things like that either. I didn't know how gross men were until Haley came over here and showed me some of her Tinder messages. And Haley is my niece. She's been on the podcast before, early episodes. She showed me her Tinder inbox. And I'm like, that is sick. That is like gross. And she's like, that is every message. And I'm like, why the hell would you stay on that? I didn't know people talk to each other like that in general, let alone men talking to women that way.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe I hold women up on a pedestal. I don't know, but I could never say anything like that.
I got plenty of stories about, because I worked in the prison system.
I couldn't look my wife in the eye after saying some of those things. I couldn't.
I worked in the male prison. You could just imagine the things that were said to me.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm there.
Men are gross.
Nasty.
I didn't know how gross, I didn't know. Here's something that you might identify with. Do you come across stupid people all day, every day?
Every single day. I'm like, I didn't bring enough crayons for this.
Like, how the fuck did you make it this long without getting hit by a bus?
Yeah.
I think about it all the time. It's like, and I didn't know that most people are stupid. I didn't know that until recently, as an adult. I'm like, am I just this smart, or am I really smart, or are people that really that dumb?
People are really that dumb.
That's exactly
why
what it
there's
is.
Warning labels and things.
Yes, and there's an old joke. Bill Engvall or Jeff Foxworthy, one of the two. I think it was on Blue Collar Comedy Tour. It's like the reason why they have those warning labels on things. They wouldn't have those warning labels if somebody hadn't tried it. Right? Yeah. And like the sparks shooting out the Barbie's skates. You remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. And then of course the warning label on hair dryers get me. Don't use this around water.
Yeah, and toasters too. Yeah, we came back quite often to visit just because I think it was hardest on Grandma and Grandpa when we left.
Yeah. And we lost Grandpa in 2013.
Yeah, we had been gone for 5 years. Yeah, they had developed a relationship with Tamara. They have a much more personal relationship with Tamara, who's their great-granddaughter, than probably any of the rest of the great-grandkids. And I have some level of guilt for that. I know you don't look at it much differently than just kind of how it is on the surface. I don't think you blame me for her being more spoiled than the rest of them.
Oh, no.
But there are some that do.
And that's wild to me. Like, that's what about me is so independent. Yeah. Like it drives me nuts. Like, how are you going to blame this person for this over here? Like, I know exactly why it happens. It's because I'm not around.
Well, and and my relationship life has been just crap because I wasn't shown how to be in a relationship. I didn't know how I was supposed to be treated.
That's right. That's something I didn't ever think about until just now. You're absolutely right. And from birth until well into your adult years, you really didn't have a single healthy relationship, not even with the grandparents, because they were overcompensating too.
100%.
Wow, that's just now, it's like, as you're speaking, I'm like, that's right. Nobody showed you shit.
Yeah.
The only thing that you were shown was unhealthy relationships your entire life.
The other thing that I struggle, probably the number one struggle in my adult life, and I'm sure that you don't see this side of me because you and I are just, we don't have those walls to jump over. And I mean, you and I are probably the closest two people in my world. I am a piss poor communicator.
I can see that. Yeah.
Because once emotion gets involved, you just shut that light switch off and close the door is what you did. Because you ain't getting nothing else out of me.
And I am the force in my relationship. I am the force that causes that to happen. I shout, I get angry, and I don't think about how that might be perceived. Mm-hmm. And I induce fight or flight with the people that I love. And that makes me sad. I hate that. And I asked my wife recently, do you think I'm a narcissist? She's like, no. And I'm like, well, why? What makes you think that? And she's like, a narcissist wouldn't ask that question. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, a narcissist wouldn't care. And she's mm-hmm. like, every day you care how people see you.
100%.
And she's like, and I was like, no, I don't. I really don't give a shit who sees me this way and that way. And so she's like, look, you don't care what the people across the street think of you, but you absolutely care how I think of you. I'm like, shit, you're right, you know? And I kind of knew that. I just looking at her for reinforcement of my own feelings, really. Mm-hmm. But that's really nuts that I'm just now realizing that you never really had a healthy relationship to look at other than Aunt Janice and Uncle Eddie. And from our point of view, they're anomalies. Mm-hmm. That's strange for us.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like when I left and went to Tennessee, that's being alone and just kind of starting over, because I don't know, a damn swivel when I moved there.
Yeah.
And I was finishing grad school because I hadn't graduated yet. So when I moved there, I was still in school. And so I was working full time, being a single mom and going to grad school. Didn't know a soul. So, it was hard, but, I made it.
I remember one time we were talking on the phone. I was living with my wife, but we were living at her mom's house. I was talking to you on the phone. You're kind of bummed, and I was like, "What's the matter?" You're like, "I don't have anything. I just lost my apartment. I think it was an apartment." You're like, "I don't even have any fucking dishes."
No, that was so when I first moved to Tennessee, I had been dating this guy. Again, didn't know how to have a relationship, but I learned why it worked best as a long distance relationship. It's because he had a whole nother girlfriend. Yeah. But when I moved down there, we had signed a lease on a brand new condo. I mean, like, we were the first ones that lived there, and within just a few months. So I moved down there in March, and by May, he started putting hands on me.
Son of a bitch.
And so I found out.
I didn't even know that.
I found out that he had another girlfriend, and I confronted him about it, and he put me up against the wall. And so I was like, no, you picked the wrong one. You picked the wrong one. And so I went and filed a restraining order. He had to stay away, and I made 2 phone calls. I called at the time as our stepbrother. He and I were close at that point, and we're not close anymore. He came up and got my electronics and he lived in Huntsville. He came up and got my electronics and took them back to his house so they'd be safe. And so at least I knew my electronics would be safe. And then I called.
Back when this happened, electronics were the most expensive consumer products.
Yeah, I had one of those plasma TVs. You know, those things were so expensive.
It's like $2,500 at that time.
So dumb. But so, and then I called my best friend. I was like, I'm here by myself. I need to move. I need to get out. You know, and she's like, I can't come down and help, but let me call my ex-husband. Never met the man. I think I met the man once or twice. I didn't, you know. He jumped on a flight the next day. His wife gave him a thumbs up. He jumped on a flight the next day, came to Nashville. We rented a U-Haul, loaded my entire condo in less than 6 hours.
Wow.
I signed a lease on an apartment. We moved it all into the apartment, unloaded the truck, put all my furniture, the beds and everything together. I obviously didn't get everything unpacked, but put all my beds and stuff together, and we had to run back to the condo to get because I had a second vehicle. I had the Cavalier and I had the truck. And so we got the truck unloaded, the moving truck unloaded, and then we went back to the condo and picked up my second vehicle. And he wound up sleeping on the couch or whatever that night, and then the next day he flew back to Texas.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I had nobody.
You had told me, you were like, I don't even have any dishes.
I didn't have anything.
And I felt so terrible. And
you
like
sent me money. You bought me pots and pans.
I was broke at that time. And when I was talking to Ashley, and I was like, look, Jennifer's down in Tennessee. She ain't got nothing. She don't got no dishes. Like, well, I don't want her eating off paper plates or anything. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm older, I'm like 40, paper plates is a luxury.
I love paper plates.
Oh, me too. But they're so expensive.
Yeah, I don't even hardly use my regular plates.
We don't either. The only time that we use regular plates is when we're on the struggle bus.
No different than like glass cups. I don't ever use glass cups. How many times do you go to a restaurant and they give you a plastic 32-ounce cup with your tea in it or what?
Yeah.
That's what I drink out of.
So I didn't even, so this was like 06, 07, something like that.
When that happened?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
So 08, and I live in Missouri, you live in Tennessee. At that time, the only way we could get money to each other was to mail it. Mm-hmm. Now we've got so many different ways to transfer, but I had to snail mail you some money, and you had to wait by the mailbox patiently to get some dishes. And I remember that, and I remember you said just a few years ago, you're like, you're the only one that helped.
Yeah.
And you were like, I talked to a lot of people. You were the only one that helped. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that doesn't make me feel good. That makes me feel sad. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of how I have felt my whole life, honestly. You know, like, sucks that what happened to you, but
got to get over it and move on. And that's so awesome at the same time. It is sad, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, it's inspiring because all the shit that's happened to you in your life, right?
I make a good living because I did. I finished grad school and I immersed myself into my career. It's funny because it's not a career path that I chose. You know, when I left Missouri, I worked at the Department of Homeland Security, and I had started as an airport screener, and then I went into operations from the airport. And so in operations, I started doing workforce management planning, and I'm the one that coordinated the flight schedules against how many security screeners we were going to need for the DHS contract.
No shit. Uh-huh. I didn't know that either. I just knew you worked there.
And so I did that. I was at the airport for 5 years, I think. And so I did that. I got real good at it.
That's actually a pretty interesting job.
And so when I started looking at I need out of Missouri, that's what I started looking at doing was scheduling workforce management type roles. And so that's what landed me in the Nashville area. And when I first got there, I started my career there. I was making $1,000 a week, so $52,000 a year. In September of
Which was pretty decent at that time.
It was decent.
Not great, but
when
decent.
I got laid off after 17 years last year, I was at 130,000 before bonuses. So, in 17 years, I almost tripled my income. So, and I did that by myself.
Your husband and I were just talking about this. Did you need college to do that?
I don't use my college degree for anything.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I don't use my college degree at all.
You were sold a lie.
I was sold a lie.
How does that feel?
I feel taken advantage of because, dude, that's the one piece of debt that's never gone anywhere.
Yeah.
I've got $80,000 in student loans, but
it's actually not that bad.
It's probably not because I did have scholarships.
Yeah. That's right. You did have scholarships, so that kind of it probably would have been at least twice that had you not had them scholarships.
Yeah, but I'm better about it because we had a shit childhood. I didn't have anybody help me. Me and Tamara have this conversation all the time. I'm geeky. You don't know how lucky you are that I paid for your school. You don't have any idea. And, and I think people take that for granted. And I didn't want my child to grow up to be in the same shoes that I'm in today.
Most people actually think of it in an entitled kind of way. Like children think their parents have to be responsible for those things.
No.
That's the way it is here.
Yeah, no. I paid for half of her school, or more than half of her school. And, she's got 10,000. That's it. That's all she's got. But she didn't have a car payment. She didn't have, anything. She didn't have a credit card.
And the listeners will get to meet her daughter eventually because she's one of my favorite people I've ever had on the podcast. But we had a recording snafu, and it didn't record the audio. I had all the video, didn't record the audio, and so the whole conversation was lost. But it was a great one.
With Tamara, a lot of people don't realize this. Is because of everything that I went through in my life and, the lack of support and the, having to figure things out as I grew and, just going from a child to an adult overnight. I wanted to prepare my daughter the best way that I knew how. And so when she was, she was 10, 11 years old, I opened a credit card, put her name on it.
This is so smart. I love people. I love you for doing this.
She had no idea. Of course, when it came, shred that thing. I don't want her to ever see anything with her name on it. But I built her credit up, and
there's a totally sneaky way to do it nowadays.
It's fine. I did it the right way. But she was 18. She graduated high school. When she was 18 when she moved out. But when they moved out, and they had to do the credit check to go through to get an apartment or whatever, she's like, Mom, my credit score is 780.
Yeah.
She's like, I didn't even know I had a credit score. And I was like, I did that. She's like, what do you mean? And I was like, you've had a credit card since you were 11 years old.
Don't ask me where that thing is because it's in a
She's
landfill somewhere.
Can I use it? Nah, you have moved out. Your name is off the account now.
Right.
You've got your credit. You move on with life. But
so actually, though, I think the way that the credit card companies want you to do that now is just add them as an authorized user, and they get their own card. You just shred it when it gets there.
That's what I did.
You can start them as early as you want. 2 years old, if you've got a credit card,
as long as you're responsible.
Yeah, let's not forget that part. If you have a credit card, you can put your kids on as authorized users, and you can even give them your card, like not 2 years old, obviously, but if they're an authorized user, they use your credit, and it shows on their credit.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's pretty awesome. I didn't know about that until a few years ago, and my kids are not responsible enough to handle a high credit score, if that makes sense. Yeah. There are some people that just should learn it the hard way. And
and that's one thing that I've always struggled with a little bit since she's gotten older is, because I did overcompensate monetarily, I was always fearful that she was going to have misconstrued conceptions about finances. She does not.
Yeah, and one of those things, like she just purchased her own vehicle.
Yeah, her first new-ish car. It's only a couple years old.
She can afford a nice
She could afford a new car
sports
if she wanted to.
Right. She can afford like a nice sports car. Mm-hmm. Is that what she went with?
Yeah, no, it's a sports car, but it's not like a Corvette or anything like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, she bought a Camry.
She did.
So
she did. She wanted a Toyota. My brain eludes me. What's the sports car?
Spider?
No.
Those are. I have no idea.
I'll have to look
Toyota,
it up.
Something.
But there's a sports car, and they made them for a really long time, and then they quit making them, and now they're back, and I can't for the life of me think what it's called. This looks like the Scion is what it looks like.
Okay.
But she wanted one of those for the longest, and then her first car was a Camry, and it was a hybrid, and she'd probably still be driving it today, but the hybrid batteries went out on it.
Yeah.
And so that car got her through thick and thin, she says. And so once she really thought about sitting down and being responsible, she was like, I probably ought to get a car that, that'll last me just as long as this one did.
Absolutely.
And so she went with another Camry. And while we say it's a Camry, it's and it is a sedan, it is fully friggin' loaded.
Loaded.
It's got the pano roof. It's got red leather interior. That's how bougie Tamara is. That was her one requirement. She's like, this car will have red leather. And, I don't care about anything. It's going to have red leather. And those are hard to find, by the way.
Yeah.
Real hard to find. But yeah, she does well on her own. And she's like, I don't have any money. I happen to know that she's got several thousand in the bank.
Yeah. I'm broke.
I don't have any money. I don't have any money.
But for her, she knows so she knows if she says she has money, it's going to be.
Well, and I prepared her for this. So that she went on and she went to school to get her license for cosmetology. And that's one of the things that I super prepared her on really early on, because when you do cosmetology, you never know where you're going to land. And depending on what salon you're at, you don't know whether you're going to be W-2 or 1099.
Right.
And so I prepared her really early on that I don't care how much money you make, 25% of it needs to go in a savings account.
Amen. I just had that conversation with my oldest son, Caleb. I told him, because he doesn't want to work hard. He doesn't want, he had a job at a factory and he quit. And he didn't want to tell me because of how I am with manufacturing and factory work, manual labor. I'm like, hey, there's money there. He didn't want to tell me. Mm-hmm. And when he told me, I was like, well, why didn't you want to tell me? He's like, I didn't want you to think less of me. And I was like, dude, I want you to be happy. Yeah. That's my ultimate goal. I don't care if you're rich, if you're poor.
You got to think that we didn't get that guidance when we were kids.
Right.
We didn't know how to manage money.
No, I still don't. I know a lot about money. I know a lot about money, but as far as like having the, I know how to manage it. It's just doing it in practice. Telling myself no. I don't need this one thing over here. If I've got the money in the bank, I'll spend it. I don't care.
Yeah, and see, and I'm not that way. It took me a long time to get there because there was always so much debt, and turmoil from broken relationships and stuff. So being able to, I knew how to manage money. I just couldn't because I was always digging myself out of a hole.
Yeah.
And so, but I eventually got to that point where, once I moved to Tennessee, I was, her child support. I only got a measly $200 a month, but guess what? I went into, never seen that money, and that's how she turned 16 and she got a car. So
yeah,
I didn't want his help.
But yeah, I had that conversation with Caleb, and I was telling him, ultimately, I want you to be happy. Mm-hmm. And if that means working at a damn gas station for the rest of your life, you can be successful and work at a gas station.
Yeah.
And I said, you work up from clerk to, assistant manager. Mm-hmm. You work up from assistant manager to manager. You work up from manager to general manager. Work up from general manager to district manager, and you work up from district manager, and then now you own your own store.
Yeah.
You know, and I told him, I was like, millions of people do that every day. Your happiness matters to me.
And that's why Tamara's in the field that she's in. Because I told her, you know, initially she wanted to go to vet school.
Yeah.
You know, and it was about her junior year, I think. She's like, hey, will you be mad if I don't go to vet school? And I'm like, why would I be mad? Like, I just want you to be happy. Do something that makes you happy. I don't care if you scoop poop. You know, do whatever is going to bring you joy. So.
You said scoop and poop. Poop 911.
Martin.
Yeah.
Dude, he gave me the best tips for scoop and poop.
He's an awesome guy.
He's hilarious.
Like I'm Facebook friends with him now, and a lot of the stuff that he posts on there. I agree with that. I'm probably gonna reach out to him, you know, in the wintertime when it gets cold again, to be on the show, because he said some things on his Facebook page about wintertime and people here versus people in Canada, and I want to ask,
good old Canucks.
Yeah, I want to ask, like, what do poor people do in Canada when it gets cold? You know, I want to ask those type of questions to kind of further my knowledge base on what to do here when it gets cold. So,
Yeah,
but
I can see that.
you know, I think this has been a great conversation. I wanted to dig into the abuse a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So, before we wrap this conversation up, I wanted to kind of reiterate, like, so the abuse, the sexual abuse was ongoing for 8 years.
Yep.
Was there ever a break in there where you had some relief, if you will?
No, not really.
So it was damn near constant for 8 years. Do you think that some of those issues or some of those abuses that you went through, how do you think that stuff affects your relationships today at, I don't want to give up your age or anything, but your mid-40s?
I'm 46.
How do you think that shit, even as long ago as it was, affects your relationships, especially with your spouse today?
So he went to jail. He went to prison 33 years ago. I, to this day, still have night terrors.
Damn. Does it affect your intimacy?
Yes.
With your, even with your current husband?
Yes.
Does it affect?
Especially, it's better now than when we first started seeing each other, and first hit that level of our relationship. But yeah, trying to get to a level of intimacy with anybody is a struggle for me.
So you never really had your entire life, you don't know what a normal sexual relationship looks like.
No.
Even at 46 years old, you still don't, because it's been almost ruined for you. I can go have a great date with my wife, and we can come home, and I can feel I can cut the sexual tension with a knife sometimes, you know. That never happens?
Well, it does.
But it's,
You know.
but is it, I guess you wouldn't know if it's different, would you?
Right.
'Cause-
But I mean, there's certain things that are probably more like, I'd say, off limits.
Okay.
I've got it, and we've been together for 17 years. So I mean,
You're not strangers, essentially.
yeah. So we've been able to develop and grow past some of the boundaries that I initially had because I've been able to build that level of comfort. But yeah, you know, and for those that are listening, they've got to understand the other side of it too. We've had marital problems.
Right.
And when those marital problems get brought in, that in itself kind of takes me back, and it's like it restarts those issues again. And so it's a struggle for me.
I get that.
It's a big struggle for me.
Do you think it affects your interpersonal relationships outside of intimacy? Do you think it affects how you treat other people and perceive how they treat you?
I don't care I don't care how anybody treats me, honestly.
Respect.
But I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that. Sometimes I feel like sometimes maybe yeah, but not as much as it used to.
That's awesome.
Not as much as it used to, because I could read people pretty quickly, and so it's like
that's a side effect of number one. It's a side effect of intelligence.
I catch vibes off people like, no, this isn't the person I want to mess with. I just don't need this person in my life.
It's your anxiety that does that.
Dude,
you
off the charts.
Have to, you specifically, since you were abused, you likely do that stuff subconsciously within the first 5 to 10 seconds of meeting someone.
100%.
Is this person safe?
100%.
Your husband and I talked a little bit about, he used to be in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And your daughter's father,
Mm-hmm.
is he currently in law enforcement?
To some capacity. He's no longer a commissioned officer.
So he used to be a police officer, and you guys started your law enforcement careers along the same spot because you were in law enforcement as well. You were a guard at a prison.
Mm-hmm. Which is where we met. He was a prison guard too.
Do you think that, they call women who jump from
badge bunnies?
Yeah. Do you think
No.
you don't think that has anything to do with being with police officers or seeking out that type of relationship?
No. Have you not heard this story on, when James and I first met? Have you not heard this story?
I have. And I've actually heard that story recently. And that's one of the reasons why I asked is because I think I've actually heard that. And I can't tell you who specifically, especially on air, but
no, and
I can't tell you
why.
who specifically I've heard that from because I don't remember. But I have heard those things about, I think Jennifer is with police officers so often because this happened.
No, false. And I'll tell you that my relationship with her father is what ruined that. I would say probably initially that's how I felt when I met her dad was, oh my God, this is a safe space, and I think that's really why I let my guard down and was like, okay, I can have a child, if, this is the life I want to build. And,
he's a great guy, but
he's
just not a
horrible,
not a great
partnership for a relationship.
Yes. And,
but I mean, we still talk. I mean, we could still be cordial and we still have casual conversations, we still have that ability to do that, 20 years later. But he ruined all that. And so once he completely destroyed that level of trust, it ruined it for everybody else. So at that point, anything with badge and beyond was out of the question. And when I met James and I found out he was a cop, I was like, no.
I did like you. I did.
Right. Like, it's the first time I seen a picture of him in uniform. I was like,
shit.
No. He's like, what's your story? Why don't you like cops? And I was like, let's just not go here. Just move on about your way.
I think at that point, all you would have had to say is, I was married to one.
That's exactly where my ex-husband's a cop. Oh.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you think that, so we're going to have to split this up into different podcasts. I'm going to have to do this because we didn't get to mom at all.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a lot about mom because now that she's not here, I miss her.
I do too.
I know that there was a lot of things that I was pretty mean and hateful to mom about. That she probably didn't have a whole lot of control over. And I know that mom throughout her, though she had a lot of issues, and I don't know how you guys feel with her or towards her or how you perceived that she felt towards you. I know my mom loved me, and I know that I loved my mom. And I see a lot of things in today's society where parents just don't give a shit about their kids. And I think that started with our parents' generation.
And I didn't feel that. Once I turned Robert in and he went to prison, my relationship with our mom tanked. And I didn't, we didn't speak for the longest time. And somewhere along the way, she...
and there was some resentment in there from her towards you.
Yeah, a lot of resentment.
Which is fucking weird.
There was at one point, she accused me of having an abortion. I was like, I don't even know if I can have damn kids.
Right.
How am I going to, if I did get pregnant, why would I have an abortion, And so for the longest time, and she always like, you're a liar, and I just, my mind was utterly blown at some of the crap she would say to me. And I just...
Do you think she believed that stuff?
I think she did. Because as we, have examined things of how, after she died or whatever, I think our mom had a mental illness that I think that she believed 9,000%.
I think she actually had several mental illnesses.
Yeah, I agree.
And I caught some of them.
Yeah, I think she's got some mental illness. But I think that she believed every word that came out of her mouth because I think she lied to herself so often. I think every word that that exited her mouth, she believed.
That's interesting because I married somebody like that once. My ex-wife is like that. She lies so much she believes herself.
Pathological liar.
Yeah, and now that she's older, it's something that she talks about now, and that she's pretty kind of open about. I did this before, and I'm not completely honest, and that's something I'm working on.
Right.
And I think that's very cool. I don't think you should ever be too old to do things like that.
Yeah.
And then you ultimately grow from things like that. But that's very interesting, that you and I see a lot of the same thing on that aspect, that like a lot of the things that we thought were normal was really just a bunch of mental illness.
Abnormal. Yeah.
Yes. Crazy people do crazy things. And back when I was younger, I heard it all the time. Crazy people don't know they're crazy.
100%.
And do you remember, like right even up till Mom died, she thought she was sane.
Yeah, she totally thought she was normal.
Yeah.
But you see, I moved away and I was 29 when I moved away. And so from the age of 13 when I turned him in until, 29 when I moved away. Even after I moved away, clear up until she died, I have less years in that span of, 20 years or whatever. I have less time in that 20-year span that I spoke with our mother than I didn't. I had cut her off for more than 75% of that period, because her mental illnesses and her inability to manage her freaking life. You get to that point when you're like, get a grip, like,
right after she died, we found out she was hiding loans from people.
Yeah.
Like she get payday loans that she didn't even have a job. Like, how are you going to pay this shit back?
Yeah. But I the relationship with she and I dissolved with all the abuse and everything. And, that was its own thing, and then we just get to where we were civil again, and then she loses her mind and I'm going to be a mom. So that crumbled our relationship again, and then she was in the hospital. I was at her side every waking moment of every day. I didn't even get a thank you. And so then I went through the divorce and I moved and we talked on the phone. The biggest the biggest interaction that I think that we had at that point was our mom was educated.
Yeah.
And so as I was doing grad school, even undergrad, she was my sounding board because
she knew what you were going through.
I'm a procrastinator.
Right.
I'm a master procrastinator. And so I would write my 20-page paper the night before it was due. And most of the time I did it from her office because we would sit there and drink coffee together and I'd read it to her to make sure I didn't, I wasn't just rambling. And so that was the extent of the relationship that me and my mom had, it was education based. Personal relationships, there wasn't one.
It's actually quite the opposite from the relationship that I had with her. I didn't have much academic help from her, but I did get love, and I knew that she loved me.
Yeah,
so that wasn't immediately apparent to you that you were loved.
No.
By anybody but your grandparents.
Well, and it was different for them. For me, and maybe it's different for me now because I'm an adult and I'm older and my child's grown or whatever. For me, love is not just an emotion. It's also a physical feeling. So, I know you and James have this conversation about freaking the 5 love languages
love
all
languages,
the time.
Yep.
So my love language is touch. And so because of the physical and sexual abuse that I went through, people were afraid to touch me.
I get that. Yep.
And so
it's like when I first started this conversation, I don't know how to talk to people about this stuff because you want to be respectful, right?
Yeah.
But my inclination is just to come out and ask.
Well, and that's what I was saying. I don't care what people think about me. I don't get my feelings hurt when people ask really strange off the wall questions or really I don't get that inner emotion attached to what question are they. I don't deal with that. It's like maybe I got a touch of autism. I don't know. I am an extremely ridiculously literal person.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why.
And that's why I like asking questions sometimes appears to be rude.
And so, and that may be the same for me. And that's why, like some of my puppy buyers, when I'm trying to explain something, I don't sugarcoat anything. Like I'm going to tell you, this is what I expect and this is and give me a straight answer. Right. Yes or no. We don't need to jump all over it. Yes or no.
Yes.
And so, I'm not going to sugarcoat stuff. And that's probably why me and James get along. He's got a humor about him that, I love that portion of him, but I am not funny at all.
You are very unintentionally funny.
But I'm a very literal person with words that come out of my mouth. And so I think that's why when emotion gets involved, I think that's why I shut down, is because I cannot formulate words to come out to portray the message that I want to get across without.
Like you don't mind using logic. I think that's easy for you, but when it comes down to using emotion, red flags and lights and sirens start going off.
And I think that goes back to, how my relationship was with Mom, because everything education wise is all logic. It's all out of a book. You've all got to do everything is calculated and methodical. Everything is step 1, step 2, step 3, to get to your conclusion, and if you start talking about, oh, well, I'm sorry that I wasn't there when you were, and then you bring in the emotion, and there was a firm line there. There wasn't that.
I remember not too long before she passed away, we were sitting in her kitchen drinking coffee, and the subject of blood type got thrown out there, and somebody said something. Well, I think Ashley said it. I wonder what blood type Sully is. And Mom's like, well, I can tell you. And like, well, we don't have any centrifuges around here or anything. Right. Like, how are you going to do a blood test? And Mom's like, it's simple biology. And then she just right there on pen and paper, she's like, here's the formula. Here's how you figure that out. And she was that smart. Yeah. But I mean, she couldn't manage her life. That's very, very true. She didn't have, she had very, it's almost like she,
The straw that broke the camel's back for me was, knowing where we came from. And when that happened again in her life and she chose to stay.
yeah.
That's the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Yeah, I can see that. And for me, it was like actually like getting to see what you and Joe had talked about for all these years, like getting to see that like out in the open,
Mm-hmm.
getting to see.
It's very eye-opening, isn't it?
It is. And you get to see it. Like, I thought a lot differently about Mom. I thought she was very strong and very independent. And then,
She is the furthest from an independent person that I'd ever met in my life.
yeah, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. And she was very dependent upon a male figure being around.
100%.
I don't know where that came from,
I don't either.
but it was very sad to see that. And then when
And I don't know if you knew this or not, but because of that, do you know how hard our grandmother is on herself?
yeah,
She feels a level of, and many people don't. My grandma's one of my best friends. I talk to her on the phone every single day. And we're entering a really hard part of our life right now. I'm like even thinking about it, let alone talking about it. But our grandma's, what year is this? 25. She'll be 85 years old this year.
yeah, yeah.
But she's starting to exhibit signs of dementia.
You want to know my honest opinion about that? It's because she's sitting up there all alone.
All alone. And she doesn't have anybody that comes
I don't
and sees
have
her.
that relationship with Grandma, and I know it would mean the world to her.
Mm-hmm.
I can't put away the things that happen to me,
Yeah.
and I know. So it's really, really rough for me to explain that my relationship with the grandparents. Grandpa and I were great.
Yeah.
Had a great relationship with Grandpa. Grandma and I, we've always had to work to make that relationship work.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm an adult, it's easy to step back.
Hands off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know Joe goes up there all the time. You talk to her every day, and I figure she's better off in someone else's hands as opposed to the treatment that I inevitably would, like, what's the point in me going up there and ignoring her the whole time I'm there, It's not very nice. And I do worry quite a bit about Grandma being home alone all the time. And I try to talk to her. I'm like, Grandma, you got to leave the house. And COVID destroyed so many things. Grandma hasn't left the house since COVID.
She leaves every once in a while, but
I know she leaves every once in a while, but
keeps her at the house is her niece. I mean,
oh yeah, for certain. And then she had that she had a health issue. She ended up in the hospital when she went out with Aunt Janice and Uncle Eddie
mm-hmm.
to a baseball game. That was very scary because it was like a stroke,
mm-hmm.
but they didn't find anything wrong.
Yep. So, but yeah, she blames herself a ton for, our mom being the way that she was, which then in turn resulted to what happened to us. And, and it's like, the rolling rock gathers no moss sort of thing.
Right.
But she firmly believes that it's her fault, and but she doesn't understand where she went wrong. It's not her fault.
Right.
But, our mom moved out. She married my dad when she was 15.
Yeah.
But my grandma's like, maybe I shouldn't have let her do it, but at the same time, it's like, I'd tell her, it doesn't matter.
She was gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. She was going to do it. You're either going to just embrace what's going to happen or push it away, and it's still going to happen. So, and yeah. So,
yeah, they didn't make her move to California. They didn't make her get pregnant. They didn't make her get married. I think I think there was some conscious stepping back from the situation with Grandma and Grandpa too. I think with Mom, I think, I don't know if they looked at it as a lost cause or anything like that, but I think that they thought Mom was okay and Mom wasn't okay. Mom probably hid a lot of things from Grandma and Grandpa, and that probably didn't help a lot of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do see that with the guilt, and I don't know how to, I don't know how to respond to that almost, because like, guilt's not going to help anybody.
Yeah.
And, the only thing it's doing is tearing, Grandma apart.
Right.
And so I try not to feel guilty about a lot of things. Like I make peace with things before I do them, kind of thing. I know I do feel guilty about some things with my relationships here at home, but I don't dwell on things anymore like I used to. And I don't, like, if something was to happen to Caleb right now, I wouldn't think of that as my fault. And I think that's what you're talking about with Grandma, that she saw a lot of things that she's like, is that my fault? And then internalized all the negativity and didn't think about the positive aspect that she had on Mom's life. Like, Mom was terrible with money, but she kept us alive. That has a lot to do with the way she was raised. Grandma and Grandpa, if they didn't shoot it, catch it, or eat it.
I kept you alive.
Shoot it,
I kept you alive.
I think we kept each other alive, for real.
Yeah.
Because even
I happen to remember some trips to, what was it? The food barn.
Yeah.
We would have to steal groceries sometimes. I remember that. But we made it happen. We grew a lot of our food too. So.
Yeah, and that stuff happened a lot after you moved out. Like when I was made to do the whole garden by myself. Like nobody was there for that. It was.
We had a small garden when we lived on Hamburg. Olive.
When we lived over on Hamburg, the house next door to us had burnt down.
Yep, the bad house.
And we had, for 3 seasons, we had corn. Like, we even fucking grew our own potatoes.
Well, man. I mean, before the Bab house burned down, there was the small garden in the back of the house. And do you remember having rabbits? We using the rabbit pellets to fertilize the garden.
I remember where those rabbits came from. They were Phoenix Scientific Lab rabbits.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. But.
So, he was the president of Phoenix Scientific at that time, but he was good friends with Mom. And they had like 40 rabbits.
Dude, Mom worked at Phoenix when I found out I was pregnant. So, yeah, hook me up with one of them.
There you go.
But yeah, so she was working at Phoenix when I found out I was pregnant, and that's, I think it was Phoenix. I'm pretty sure it was. I don't even remember at that point. And shortly after I found out I was pregnant, she wound up leaving Phoenix, and she went to a company that they made like bandages and stuff. I don't even remember what the heck that company.
It was in Kansas City.
Yeah.
ITW Diamond.
That's it. But she started down there, and she had to do her orientation and stuff. And, we were in our weird era of life where, I knew I was pregnant or whatever. And she's like, I can't be driving back and forth from St. Joe to Kansas City every day while I'm in training because I got to be there at 6 o'clock. Can I stay at your house? And I'm just like,
maybe.
I don't know.
You got to be nice.
So, she would stay at my house during the week and then come home on the weekends. But
I liked your house in Independence. It was a nice place.
It was a nice place. I hated losing that one, but neighborhood's not so great now, but it's fine.
That's funny how that happens.
Yeah, it was a good neighborhood then, but not, it's Independence.
Really nice house. Really, like, it wasn't the best. It needed work, but it was a really nice house in a really nice neighborhood.
I like it better than the house that I live in now.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Because it had a basement.
That's true. It did, but it was split level.
It was a split level.
And
I love my house now, but it was a substantially larger home than what I've got now.
So your house now, we won't show pictures of it or anything because that's pretty invasive, but your house now, it actually looks like a painting. So, I mean, just driving up on it, it looks like a painting, and then sitting on your front porch.
The painting's from the front porch out. That's the painting.
But I mean, you're looking at it as you're coming up to the house. It looks like a painting too. So
that's what bought the house. I'm not gonna lie. That's why I'm there. You know, it's a little small. It was a little snug when the kids were growing up. But you know, now we're empty nesters. So we're like, you know, and we've got the financial means to be able to go bigger if we wanted to. But
and you're
we're
like, so much room for activities.
I'm like, no, we are not house poor. You know, that we're past that 15-year mark. So the mortgage is more than halfway done. So
actually, your home, like when you first bought it, it was average. Right. You know, so average price for the day.
Fat equity now.
Yes.
Fat.
And I just discovered that we have equity here. We just bought this place a year ago.
Yes.
And no down payment. Like, I mean, you helped me secure my down payment. Mm-hmm. So, no down payment. And like, we've only been here a year and we have probably 40,000 equity.
Well, see, and I didn't have a down payment on my house either. That was back when, so I bought it in 2010. It was right after the Nashville flood. It was actually during the Nashville flood, but I didn't have a down payment. You know, like I said, you know, when me and Tamara's father got divorced, you know, he walked away and I had to file bankruptcy. And so, you know, I was still trying to recover from all of that. But it was when they did the rebate when you bought a house or whatever. So it's like, you know, if I could buy a house and it meets this,
well, didn't you use like some rural development?
Yeah, it's a rural development loan.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when I had purchased my house with Tamara's father, we had they call them ARMs, I think is what they're called, an adjustable rate mortgage.
Okay.
And so our mortgage after like 5 years or 10 years or whatever, it would fluctuate. And I mean, it's just the weirdest thing ever. But in order to secure the house for the price that we bought it at, we had to have a second mortgage too, to be able to, it was just convoluted. And so, you know, when he decided that he was going to quit paying the mortgage, I was screwed. You know, I had to file bankruptcy. But when I bought this house on the rural development loan, it was a fixed interest rate. And I think my interest rate on the mortgage has only been like 4% or something stupid.
That's not, that's really, actually really good for right now. But
yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's like every time I think about it, you know, because I have went through financial struggle, you know, even as an adult trying to raise Tamara, you know, and then especially within the last 6 months with me losing my job and whatever, you know, you're like, do I get a second mortgage? Do I refinance? Do I get a HELOC? You know, what do I do? You know, and so you just weigh your options. But I'm just like, dude, I'm not getting rid of my 4%. You know?
Yeah,
I'm past that. But we bought in a relatively. I thought it was a little pricey at the time. Not gonna lie, because it was a foreclosure. I knew it needed work. And when I wrote the terms on the house, they had to do some replacements and. Because it had sat vacant for so long, there had been some mold and mildew growth on so they had to bring in a specialty team and treat all of that, you know. And I always was super fearful whether that would impact me later if I'd have reoccurring effects from it because I'm highly allergic to mold. But dude, we've got $300,000 in equity now.
Yeah,
$300,000. I'm like,
and what's so impressive about that is I know your purchase price, your original purchase price, and I'm like.
Paid $100,000 for the house, y'all.
Only in America. Only in America. Now this shit still happens. Now your starter homes are $200,000 to $300,000 nowadays. The average median home price across the United States is $400,000, which makes me sad for the younger generations growing up.
Yeah,
but for their generations,
it makes me sad for Tamara.
Yes, and that's
Tamara's at a point where she could buy one, but man, a starter home is.
Especially down where
out
you
of
live.
reach.
Especially down where you live. It's really, really expensive. And
like,
it's like shortly after that you went down there, like the entire country followed you.
I feel like it sometimes.
Nashville's one of the, like, I think Kansas City's up there
Traffic
now, but I
sucks.
think Nashville is the fastest growing city in the United States. I'm
Traffic
wanting to
sucks.
hear, I'm wanting to say I heard that a few years ago.
So that's the literally single solitary only reason I don't miss the fact that I lost my job. After COVID, I was remote almost my entire career. And after COVID, they had built this $1 billion building. And they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, everybody that's in the Nashville area has got to put butts in seats because we got to have this tax credit for, building this. And I'm like, dude, I haven't worked in the office in 15 years.
Yeah, since you
and
opened.
they're like, and they're like, do that or you don't have a job. And I'm, begrudgingly driving to the office, twice a week, 3 times a week rather, when I wasn't out campaigning. And 47 miles from my door to the entrance there. Took me almost 2 hours a day.
Holy shit. Wow.
One way. 2 hours up, 2 hours back.
That's insane. Just traffic in Nashville. That was.
Yeah. And so getting from my house to 65, generally about 30 minutes, give or take. But then, and depending on what time of day you left, you've got a 10-minute window. If you miss that 10-minute window, you are screwed.
Yeah. That's kind of what it's like in Kansas City, too.
That window was I had to leave home by 6 o'clock. If I left any later than 6:10, it's going to be a 2-hour drive.
Wow.
And so, I'd get to the office before everybody dang else because I didn't want to sit in traffic.
Yeah.
Because the office that they wound up building was in the area called the Gulch. It's down towards Broadway, downtown Nashville area. When I first moved to Nashville and when I bought my house, they were off of Harding Place, which is next to the Nashville Zoo. So, like 30 miles closer, that's a stretch, probably 10 to 15 miles closer. But I didn't have to...
10 to 15 miles, 30 minutes.
Yeah, without traffic. And from Harding Place on, as you got towards the 440 split on 65, that's where the traffic starts.
Right.
And so I didn't have that problem when they were at the other office.
Because if you were on the other side.
Because if they would have been on the other side, I would have had no problem going back to the office. But, I was probably a little disgruntled, not going to lie. And so it's like when it hurt when they let me go, but at the same time, I was like...
I was very impressed with the way you handled that. I'm still impressed because even talking to you then and now seeing how that progressed, you were like, one door closes, another one opens.
I was scared shitless. I was scared to death. Scared to death.
I know. I mean, we had conversations about like, I'm going to be X amount of time without a paycheck and I've got to start looking now. I've got to find employment now.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you don't, I think you'll be okay. But yes, I'm with you. You do.
Yeah. I was like, I thought I'd be okay, and then 2 weeks later, my husband left.
Yeah.
Then shit got real. You're like, it's not gonna be okay.
That's when panic sets in. Am I gonna lose everything?
Yeah.
Am I, like, you actually had a few thoughts. Am I gonna be able to eat this month?
Yeah.
And that's from riding on top of the world, the crashing all the way down. And you would talk about shit, luck.
I didn't have health
you lost.
insurance.
Yeah. And that happened.
And I
all
have
at
medical
once.
issues. I didn't have health insurance. I think that was scary. Yeah. And the other side of it is my hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. Your hobby is, you, of course, like we've been on the podcast about your hobby. You, as a matter of fact.
Oh yeah. You're present. I brought you in my magazine.
She was, they wrote an article about her, did an interview in Show Site magazine.
It's April 25.
That's pretty neat. And then you got a whole...
Well, not only am I in the friggin' magazine, dude, I was highlighted on their cover for their website too. It was amazing. Like if you go to their website today, I'm on there on the top. I'm like number 3 down. It's the best ever.
It was opened up right to the...
Page 231.
231, where am I at? You opened it right to the page the other day.
I got the touch. I got the magic touch.
We're close. 226.
Right there.
No, right there.
Yeah.
So right here, thoughts from the working breeders, and it's a whole article and interview, and you were in this magazine, and it's so cool. I'm sweating all over it, but
it's all right. I've and my favorite thing about that one, and I don't know if you've seen the other one. If you go to Grandma's house, Grandma has a whole stack. She's got a copy of every freaking magazine I've been in.
I didn't know you've been in more than one.
I am.
That's wild.
I had an interview in December as well, but the rest of them are just ads or advertisements. But It's my advertisement, and it's just like any magazine. If you put an advertisement, you got to pay for it. But she's got a copy of every one of them. But most of the time, it's me and Hammy. Because Hammy's been my boy. He's my number 5 dog in the country, blah, blah, blah. This is my favorite because they were asking about me as a working dog breeder and things like that. And so when I built my advertisement this time, I included every single dog that I have had titled in my kennel that was born in my kennel. So every single dog on that advertisement is a big country dog, born and raised in my home. And there's 13 dogs on that page. They're all champions or grand champions. And out of the 13 dogs, 7 of them are in my home.
That's impressive. I don't care who you are. That's impressive. I'm like my best friend shows dogs, and
he's in Nebraska showing her today.
So he's so proud, and it's like he doesn't want to toot his own horn or anything, And when he tells me about these, I'm love to hear about it because I love that he's excited about it.
Well,
I don't give a shit about dogs.
I tell you all the time, that I'm so closed off. I don't have, I'm fine with being at home. I'm fine with not building relationships.
Yeah.
I'm fine with all of that. For me, doing the dog thing is, I don't have to have relationships with anybody, but I am close with this world because my dogs have never betrayed me.
Yeah.
They never will. I could shut them in a closet for a week and come back, and they're happy to be. They're happy to see me.
Yeah. We've talked about that numerous times, and
they will never forsake me.
That's one of those things that I'll remember. One of those conversations that you'll remember for a very long time is that first time I ever heard you say that. Is my dogs will never leave me.
I don't have to worry about not trusting them.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, that's very, very powerful. Because
you got to think about the whole totality of life. Everybody's left. Everybody's walked away.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, and I was just actually thinking about that earlier in my life, and it kind of my dad left, then Joe left, then you left, and I never really thought I had an issue with that, but then I was tested for autism, and ladies and gentlemen, I have a touch of the tism, diagnosed this time.
Yeah, right.
But when reading the assessment, I apparently have a lot of issues in my adult life that stem from my childhood, and that's what this guy thinks. And I was
hearing you talk about this, I'm like, dude, I've totally got it now. I've totally got the tism. I'm like, if Ricky's got it, I've got it.
Right. And so like ChatGPT assumed that I was autistic, and like, how you carry on conversations with ChatGPT, like you can talk to ChatGPT like it's a human. And it assumed I was on the spectrum, and like,
I don't care for your therapist anymore. I just use ChatGPT.
It's fantastic. I love ChatGPT, and it makes research so much easier because I am
smarter, not harder. Me and James have this conversation every single day. I won't tell you all the things that I use it for, but it's like James is they went on a fishing trip the weekend of your birthday. That's why we weren't able to be here, which broke my heart because he had already had that booked before we ever knew about the party.
Right.
But he's like, I don't even know what to pack today for this trip. And I was like, looking up the weather. I'm like, ChatGPT, make me a packing list for whether for a fishing trip and da da da.
Right.
And it sure did spit me out a checklist. And I handed it to him like, here you go. He's like, what the hell?
Yes, and it is so accurate now that it didn't. When I first started using it didn't remember conversations that it had. You'd have to prompt it to go back and remember that specific. And now you can talk to it about things that you talked to it 3 days ago, and it'll pick up right where you left off.
So you know that I am in IT essentially. I do payroll systems and things like that.
Yeah.
But a big portion of my life, and I work in healthcare now versus the technology industry where I was for the better portion of my life. But I am very. Again, it's probably because of my life. I don't understand sometimes, but then I'm like, oh, light bulb moment. It's because I'm a literal person. I focus a lot on data analytics.
Yes. Yes.
And so
data tells a story.
It's a finite ending. There's an end to it. It's not going to carry on. You've got a final number. But I do a lot of data analytics inside of multiple different systems. But Excel's where we do most of the manipulation because in the field that I'm in now in healthcare, we don't have a lot of the same access that I had when I was in technology. So it's not like I can write my own SQL queries and stuff like I used to be able to do and things like that.
Right.
But so I do most of it inside of Excel, but my company doesn't use Excel. They use Google Sheets.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, dude, I hate Google. Let me tell you about my Google Suite product. I freaking hate it. But I do it inside of Excel, and then I'll copy paste.
Right.
But I sometimes get stumped on my formulas if I'm trying to give it a really specific logical data point that I wanted to pull out. And error if, and I'm like, no, not error if. And so ChatGPT is my best friend when I get real irritated with those errors, and I'm able to make it work in just a matter of, I waste so much time like retyping the whole cotton picking string,
right.
And all I really had to do was just tell ChatGPT to tell me what to do, and it would have given it to me, and I would have not wasted time.
So I use ChatGPT for a lot of things, and it's not for me. I ask ChatGPT, like it helps me do research. Mm-hmm. I don't ask ChatGPT to do my research for me. Yeah. That's not what I do. I use ChatGPT to direct me to the research.
That's what I do with James too. James had asked me for some advice for a couple of different things for work.
Because Google, like you said, Google's pretty much freaking worthless these days.
Yeah, and so I struggle with communication, and so I know what I want to say, but a lot of times I say things so literal that people read it the wrong way and it hurts their feelings. And so
you have to, like, I assume that you do the same thing that I do. Do you walk into a conversation assuming that the people that you're talking to are just as smart as you?
100%.
Yes, that is where I make mistakes because I'm assuming that these people think like I do.
But sometimes you could walk in within the first 30 seconds, you're like, oh, these guys are dumbasses.
Yes. But when it happens with family, you're like, how do you not get this? Like,
right.
Yes, I completely understand.
But yeah, I mean, I find now, and I don't know whether you do this or not, but I do. When I have a thought or feeling, or I know exactly what I want to say, but I know the personality type of the person that I want to give that message to, but I know I don't have the ability to include the empathy and feeling that they're going to need to interpret that message, I will tell ChatGPT exactly the message I want to give, but I need them to be able to format it in a format for an empathetic person that has feeling and emotion to be able to absorb the message I'm trying to deliver, and it will spit it out exactly the way I need it to.
That's brilliant, because like
that gave me goosies, didn't it?
I walk around like I say things, and then people look at me like, God damn, you're the biggest dickhead I've ever met. You know?
That's because we're literal.
Well, I say like, I didn't start. No, I notice it with my daughter a lot. Mm-hmm. Like I consciously watch how I say things and convey information because I've not been around her whole life. And when I say things, she tends to take them hard.
Yeah.
Like if I'm being a dick for whatever reason, don't take it personal. That's just me. That's who I am. Like I'm comfortable with
But that's
you.
why you and me get along so well.
Right.
I don't hurt your feelings. You don't hurt my feelings. You know, we are on the same page because we operate the same way.
Yeah.
I didn't read
crazy.
encyclopedias in the bathtub, but you know, it's whatever.
But you know what? We're going to have to do this again. I'm going to have to pack up all this shit and bring it to your house next time.
Yeah, we will spend way too much time. You know, Tamara's got a guest room and she's got an amazing bonus room that we could set everything up in.
Hell yeah.
And that, you know, you wouldn't hear the dogs barking. So, but yeah, I mean, there's plenty of space and we know you guys like coming down there anyway.
Absolutely. So. And I've not seen Tamara's place and, you know, I miss Connor and, you know, that's Tamara's fiance.
Well, and you haven't gotten to meet Evan yet, so.
Who the fuck is Evan?
So they have custody. Well, not custody.
Okay. So it happened.
Guardianship.
It happened.
Yeah, he moved in before school started.
So they're officially parents now.
They are, and she hates it. She's like, I
How
cannot see.
How old is he?
He's 14.
Oh God, that's why she hates it.
Yeah, and so you know, but he's not been raised. You know, he grew up the same way Connor grew up. You know, and
right.
He doesn't know how to do anything, and he doesn't have respect for property or people or you know whatever. And dude, it drives her mad. She was a very structured kid. She had responsibilities. She had to take out the trash. She had to, you know, and she would tell you, you know, Mom made me take care of the dogs all the time. We were building a character. She didn't have to do that. I was trying to help her create responsibility and, you know, all of these things. It's not that I
Yeah, if you're going to live here, you got to help out.
Yeah. And so now that's how she is. She's like, if you're going to live here, you need to do it. And she gets so bent out of shape. And it's amazing.
It's wonderful.
I get so tickled because I don't know if I've told you this or not, but shortly after, you know, he had moved in, her and Connor had gotten into an argument and Connor's like, I don't see the big deal about it, you know, and Tamara says something. She calls me immediately after. She's like, Mom, I opened my mouth and my mother came out.
It happens to me all the time.
She's like, I don't, she's like, I'm turning into you. And yeah, it's funny, but I get tickled now because I'm like, you know, I see it. And
You're like, it's so finally happened.
I know. And she got to skip the diaper stage to get there. It's fantastic. So, but yeah, pack up, come down.
Right on. I will have to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been rambling here for a long time. So I hope like 2.5 hours, something like that.
Wow.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like and subscribe and we tried to bring this conversation to it was so where it's acceptable to YouTube and acceptable to the other censorship platforms. But I tell you what, like if you guys have any questions or comments or anything that you would like to ask, anything you would like to say, just put it down in the comments below and we'll do this again and we'll try to answer your questions or talk to you guys the best we can.
Absolutely. You know, and you know, as an abuse survivor, you know, that has made myself a successful adult, you know, that's the number one thing that I want to make sure that I get out with this message is you're never alone. You don't have to live with a secret. There's plenty of people that'll help you guys. So if you guys are a subject to sexual abuse or sexual assault or molestation or even physical abuse, tell somebody. Reach out.
And if we can't get back to you, I do have resources that I can have reach out to you. So leave your thoughts and comments down below, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.